All right, we're about to get started, you guys. Hey, let's go, let's go. And 5, 4, 3, 2. All right. Hey, what's up, everybody? I sound like Lacey Green. Okay, you guys, I am not going to keep you forever, but I've been meaning to give you this information for a few days. Now, we're going to talk about insulin resistance. I recommend you take notes. Of course, you could always listen to the replay of this whenever you want. But insulin resistance is real, and it is causing a whole bunch of problems. It's making it difficult for people to lose weight. Some people have high blood pressure, and they look great. They're not overweight. But where's that coming from? There's some people with migraines, and then you're chasing and going after all these other things that you believe is going to help it. But the reason you're having some of these challenges is insulin resistance. And most people, when I talk to nurses, I talk to doctors, I talk to everyday people, they don't really understand it. Well, we're going to change all that. And that's one of the reasons why, if you like understanding, if you like knowledge, if you like being informed, if you want to better understand health, you want to break through all the confusion, you want to come to our upcoming Food as Medicine course. It's a course, a conference, and a certification. You're going to get a certification on food as medicine just by attending. I mean, you're going to learn quite a bit. Like if I was a personal trainer, I would 100% go to this. I wish we had something like this years ago when I was new. If I was a dietitian or if I'm a nutritionist, I would go to this. If I was a nurse, a school teacher, anyone who gives advice, I would go to it. And you know what? If you want to know, right, you don't have to wait on experts to tell you what insulin resistance is and to really understand food as medicine and how to apply it to not only your life, but your kids' life, your family's life, help your husband who may be a diabetic and maybe he doesn't want to work with someone like me. Maybe he doesn't want to work with anybody. He wants to do it on his own. But if you're his wife, he'll listen to you. You can make the foods. You can start to swap out certain ingredients for better ingredients. It's like I'm looking at this B12 synthetic form of B12 that's in a lot of products. And it causes a lot of problems for people. And they don't even know it. They have no idea. Now, my next live, or when you see a new video pop up, I'm actually going to speak to this ingredient that's in a lot of people's products. And this past week with my clients, I investigated and asked questions, and I was surprised how many of them were consuming this ingredient, which is a B12. I'm going to explain it to you. It's something that I wouldn't recommend for anybody, but yet it's in a lot of products. Okay. So we're going to go into not that today, but that's just something for you to know. Okay. Everything that I'm sharing with you today is brought to you by the Detox Drop. Okay, you can learn more about it. I provided a link for that. I provided the 8-week fat loss challenge. There's information there. You don't have to wait until Monday. You can start taking advantage and putting yourself in a position to win with all of these things, okay? And we're going to talk about this study. Okay, this study. And in order to understand the study, we got to talk about insulin resistance. What is it? So let's just dive in, okay? Let's look at this study first. Okay, have you ever heard of periodontitis? I know about it because my mom has had it for years. And we're basically talking about gum inflammation, right? Oral hygiene. This study came out this past week, and the study is very, 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 very clear, right? And it found that people who have gum inflammation, that inflammation is tightly correlated with a greater likelihood of having insulin resistance. And that is because inflammation is one of the three primary reasons why people have insulin resistance. So I'm going to share with you today also like what causes insulin resistance. Like where does that come from? And then what tests can I take? Because trust me, your doctor is not looking to see if you have insulin resistance. Now, they may say you have insulin resistance because that, before they call it metabolic syndrome, originally it was called insulin resistance syndrome. And then you want to know, like, is there something I can look for, something I can do to find out, like, where I'm at and how I can improve it? It's kind of like the whole fatty liver thing. And by the way, I got spots for 2 more people. So if you know anybody who wants to either tackle their diabetes or they want to reverse fatty liver, I have 2 spots left in my discounted program. I have 2 spots. So if you know anybody, send them my way. And even if I fill the spots for the discounted program, they can still get started in my regular paying program. I would want them to be in the discounted program, but I can put them on a waiting list so that when I lose a client or someone quits or someone gets in their own way, then when that person moves on, I would go to them first before announcing that I have an open spot. So anybody who wants to lose weight, you want to tighten up things, you want to better understand insulin resistance, all of that, I have 2 spots open. So email my assistant, Lori, at dietfreelife.com. Now, this study says it all. And I find it really interesting because I'm putting together a program for a really large dental-based company because we have the National Diabetes Awareness Month coming up in November. And so we're going to do a campaign with this company and others that teaches people about the relationship between oral health, gut health, and your overall health. And this study makes it very clear, very clear, that one of the reasons why you may be experiencing insulin resistance is the fact that your oral health may be off. Now, some of you are like, hey, I brush my teeth good. I do this good. Okay, just hear the rest of what we're talking about. I'm not saying you don't brush your teeth or take care of your teeth. There's a lot of people who take care of their teeth extremely well, but they experience periodontitis. Okay. Now that's a study. You can look it up and learn more about it on your own. But let's dive in and better understand what we mean by insulin resistance. Now, in order to understand insulin resistance, you must first know what insulin is. It is not sugar. It is not glucose. Glucose is when we're talking about sugar in your blood. Insulin is a hormone, is an anabolic hormone. Okay, anabolic means growth, but it's known primarily for regulating the metabolism of carbohydrates, fats, and protein by promoting the absorption of glucose, sugar in your blood, from the blood into your cells, like your muscle cells, liver cells, your fat cells. Again, it is the main anabolic hormone of the body. And what's really interesting about hormones, on various cells, you have receptors for those hormones. And depending on what that cell is, that hormone will do different things with that cell. Well, every cell in your entire body has a receptor for insulin. And we just talked about what insulin is known for, but it can do a lot of different things. So insulin is a very important positive hormone. But when a person becomes insulin resistant, it can create a whole bunch of challenges, right? So look to the right. You can see where high blood pressure, that's a driver from insulin. When you're insulin resistant, you're going to have high blood pressure. So anyone you know that has high blood pressure or they're taking blood pressure medications, they have a level of insulin resistance. If someone develops a stroke, there is a level of insulin resistance. If you have excess body fat, there's a level of insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is driving migraines and dementia, osteoporosis, PCOS. PCOS is insulin resistance on the ovaries. And if you got fatty liver, hey, insulin resistance is playing a role. If you have low testosterone, right, erectile dysfunction, insulin resistance. So we all can benefit from knowing what it is, what causes it, and what we can do to reverse it. Because the good news, hey, the good news is that you can reverse it. Okay. Now, if you have any questions, post it. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of keep it going. So we know that insulin's a hormone. The second thing is, what is insulin resistance? Well, the short answer is that insulin resistance refers to when the body cells, okay, remember they have a receptor, don't respond normally to insulin. Example, glucose can't enter the cells as easily, so it builds up in the blood. Insulin resistance is also a driver that causes all these things, or it exacerbates conditions like heart disease, diabetes. I mean, this should be talked about all the time. And here's an interesting part about insulin resistance is that when you go to your doctor and they do lab work, they're checking your fasting glucose, right? But a large majority of the time, they are not checking your fasting insulin. Now, this is crucial. This is crucial. So I could just sit here and just literally just sit here and just think about it, like not say another word, want you to think about it and go, well, why isn't my doctor, when they run labs, checking for my fasting insulin? Well, most of the time, they don't know and understand why they would be doing that. However, more and more doctors are discovering this and learning about it. I mean, I've had many of my clients really press hard for their fasting insulin. And then the doctors do it, and then they watch my clients totally transform, lose weight, fatty liver disappears, get off blood pressure medications, get off statins. Oh yeah, that's what I just remember something. I was looking at some literature and I was talking to one of my clients, David, if you hear this, this is for you, because I said there was something about statins and I couldn't remember, but I remember it was important and I lost my notes and I just remembered insulin resistance or statins cause insulin resistance. Another reason why you want to get off cholesterol medications. Statins cause insulin resistance. Wow. Statins cause insulin resistance. Come on. Man, I'm glad I remember that. Okay. Anyway, let's keep it going. So what are the 3 reasons why people end up becoming insulin resistant, or they have it? All right. The 3 primary causes of insulin resistance. Number 1, chronically elevated insulin levels. So say the word out loud, hyperinsulinemia, especially for those of you who are going to our upcoming conference on food as medicine. Just start practicing the word. When you're driving by yourself, hyperinsulinemia. So hyper means elevated. Insulin is the hormone. Emia, whenever you see that, means in the blood. So hyperinsulinemia. That's chronically, that means continuously having elevated levels of insulin. Now, we're not going to go into what causes the insulin to be elevated. We talk about that a lot. But when you have elevated levels of insulin, that causes insulin resistance. Okay, does anyone have any questions about that? If you're catching it live, even the replay. So, and this is within our control because the way you eat plays a huge role on if you have insulin levels being elevated. And the frequency of how you eat can also have your insulin elevated. See, when I first took my program national, I focused a lot on glucose, like blood sugar, eating in a way where the blood sugar levels wouldn't go up too high and eating in a way where they wouldn't drop too low, finding that balance. And we still want to focus on that balance. However, I discovered after my program went national that people were experiencing insulin resistance. And then I discovered that if you're eating every 2 to 3 hours, which is what I was advocating, like as a canned approach for everybody. Now, there's still some people that I actually will have them eat every 2 to 3 hours. There are still some people that will benefit from that. And you may be thinking, some of you going, well, I lost weight when I did that. Yeah, you can still lose weight. But if you are constantly having your insulin levels elevated, that eventually causes insulin resistance. So I may have put people in a position where they became insulin resistant because I had them eating every 2 to 3 hours. I mean, it's possible, but we know better now. The science is extremely clear. So depending on the person, but I have everyone space their meals out the best we can. And then we eat the right types of foods in the right combinations to optimize both insulin and glucose levels throughout the day. Okay? So elevated insulin throughout the day, every day, will lead to you becoming insulin resistant. And I have a bunch of citations to support that. Okay? Number 2, stress hormones, including, you've probably heard of one, cortisol and epinephrine. Cortisol and epinephrine. When those hormones are stimulated, right, glucose goes up. You have more sugar in the blood. And if glucose goes up, what else goes up? Insulin. Because insulin's job is to bring glucose down. And then if cortisol and epinephrine's coming out again, you got more insulin. And the more insulin you have come up, and it's happening pretty regularly, you develop insulin resistance. And then we have this thing called inflammation. Inflammation, which is what we're talking about when it comes to periodontitis. That is gum inflammation. It starts in your mouth and it makes its way throughout the body and it causes insulin resistance. Some of you have autoimmune challenges. Inflammation is a big part of all that. That may be the main culprit for why you have insulin resistance. If you have a poor gut and it's out of balance, that can open up the reality that you have leaky gut. And if you're not eating in a way to tighten that up where you don't have leaky gut, then your autoimmune situation will continue to get worse. But there are ways to eat, which we teach, that will tighten up and get rid of leaky gut. And as you tighten that up and get rid of leaky gut, you don't have that same autoimmune challenge. The inflammation is now reduced. And if the inflammation is reduced, the insulin resistance is going away. I hope this is making sense. So now inflammation could be secondhand smoke. Inflammation could be when you go and put gas in your car and you're inhaling the fumes. That can cause inflammation. Inflammation could be mold in the house, inhaling certain chemicals. So inflammation could be caused by a lot of things. It's like when I pump gas, I don't put myself in a position where I'm pumping the gas and I'm inhaling the gas. So I usually lock it and then I walk back to the front or get back in the car where I'm not inhaling it directly. When it comes to cortisol and epinephrine, it helps to reduce your stress. Learn how to deal with stress better. Because every time you're stressing out, right, you're secreting that cortisol, epinephrine's elevated, glucose is up, insulin has to come out to bring it down. So learning to relax and learning how to cope is something that you can also do. And then again, chronically elevated insulin levels, well, depending on how we eat, and we have a methodology that shows you how to eat, and then you, depending on your situation, I may give certain recommendations to help reverse the insulin resistance. Now, what else can you do? Okay, there's a couple other things you can do. Well, number one, when you get your next lab work, if you want to get an idea if you have some inflammation in your body, the next time you get a blood test, ask your doctor, tell them that you want to request a C reactive protein, which you'll get a measurement of that. CRP, C reactive protein. It'll come with all your other lab work. And then they'll give you some numbers, a range of what would be considered elevated, what's not. But that's a nice thing to look at. Then you can have a better idea on where you are from an inflammation standpoint. And the other thing is to practice good oral hygiene. Because again, if your mouth is inflamed, that inflammation spreads throughout the body and can cause insulin resistance. Okay, I covered a lot. And we did that in a pretty short period of time. So you want to, I would say, memorize just for your own knowledge. What are the 3 primary reasons why people become insulin resistant? 1, we know inflammation can cause it. 2, stress, right, can cause it. Because we're talking about the hormone cortisol and epinephrine, adrenaline. And then 3, the way we eat. If we're eating in a way that's causing it to go up, then it's going to go up. And you got more and more kids who are becoming insulin resistant. And if you want to better understand insulin resistance, just, I've done some online seminars where we kind of break it down, but it's not the hormone that's resistant. It's the receptors that become resistant, right? So I always tell my clients, think of the cells, the receptors on the cells for insulin being gummed up. And when insulin goes to that cell to help do what is needed, the signals aren't getting through because it's gummed up. And so over time of eating the way we encourage people to eat, those cells or that gumming starts to dissipate. You start to clean on a cellular level, and then the signal gets stronger and stronger. And then you're back to being 18 as far as the receptors being receptive to insulin. And we know that every year, 10% of your cells, specifically your fat cells, are gone. And they're replaced with new cells, which those new cells aren't gummed up yet, right? So inside of a 10-year period, all the fat cells that you have are all replaced. And I know you've probably heard someone told you years ago that once you get a fat cell, you have it for life. That's not true. 10% of our fat cells die every year, and they are replaced. So in 5 years, if you're eating the way we're encouraging, 50% of your fat cells, man, what you had some that were resistant, many of them are gone, and the new fat cells aren't because you've been eating the way you're eating. You're in a much better place. All right. That's it, everybody. That is it. So I want to encourage everybody to have a great weekend. I wanted to share this information. A lot of times kids growing up today don't really think about their oral hygiene the way I remember we thought about it and was taught about it growing up. And maybe a lot of them do. I mean, my kids, they don't brush and not floss. Those are like hand in hand. When they brush, they floss. And they both do extremely well with their teeth. They definitely got it. So that's a great thing to have. It cuts down the chances of insulin resistance, puts you in a much better place. And if you talk to anyone in the dental world, they will tell you that oral health is very important. And the same as we're looking at gut health and doing what we can to make that as healthy and as balanced as possible, we want to be doing the exact same thing with our oral health. They are both extremely important, and your oral health is part of your gut microbiome, right? The gut microbiome, as we talk about all the time, begins in your mouth. So taking care of your oral health is helping take care of your gut health, vice versa. Okay. We got it. Hey, if you guys have not been to our YouTube channel, I strongly recommend you go there. Sometimes, you could binge. You could, if you're in a place where you're cleaning up the house, or you're washing dishes, or you're going on the drive. Hey, just go to the page, go to home, and find some topics that we talk about and listen in. Knowledge is power, and the more we know and apply what we know, the better we feel and the better we grow. I'm Robert Ferguson. I share because I care. And if you want to learn more, just read what we've made available. There's some links there. Don't put off until tomorrow what you know you can do today. So I hope you join and come to our Food is Medicine conference. I'm excited about the featured guests that I'm going to have there, things that will never be on YouTube, but you will get a chance to hear it directly from these people. And I'll be teaching quite a few of the sessions, and they'll build on each other so that throughout our time together, you will be like, oh man, I totally get it now. I know the truth. I have clarity. And the best part, you can go back to it and listen and watch whenever you want. And let's say you can't be there live on Friday. You don't have to. You'll have full access to it to watch it, listen in whenever you want. So there you have it. All right, you guys have a good one. I'm Robert Ferguson.